All right, guys, we are live here at the Attention Air Media Studios overlooking beautiful downtown Milwaukee. You're watching hour 9 of 24 of live Google Hangouts, covering a wide range of community manager topics from all around the world. We're celebrating our 5th year of Community Manager Appreciation Day together as a tribe, as a community, and actually this is the 3rd year we're doing these Hangouts, so pretty excited about that. We'd like to give a quick special shout out to our award sponsors for the Community Manager Appreciation Day Awards. We'll be handing out later today. That's BTC Revolutions, Flockler, Higher Logic, My Community Manager, Online Community Results, socialmedia.org, and Sprout Social. So we're the gang from My Community Manager. My name is Brew, co-producer here, and this is Sherry.
Hey everyone, I'm Sherry, co-producing GR Hangout here with Brew, as well as lead community and user experience at a company called Rebellion Media.
Hey guys, I'm Dom, social media freelance, and I also help out Brew and Sherry with My Community Manager.
So with that, guys, we're just going to kick things over. Sorry we had a little technical difficulty starting out, but Tim, take it away.
Hello everybody, how are you?
Hey Tim.
Good. So, sorry about the technical delay in the beginning. Today we're going to be discussing building a B2B community and how it differs from doing B2C community work, really. So, I know we've only got a few kind of questions to kick off quickly. So, is building a B2B community different than a B2C community in your guys' experience? Hello? Hello?
No, yeah, I'll jump in on that. So, I mean, I think a big piece of the big difference really, I think a lot of times is really the initial growth and understanding what your KPIs are, because I think a lot of times B2C, not only communities, but B2C focus, really you already have brand awareness, you already have the direct consumer relationship, and when you're able to kind of the B2B community is definitely a tougher sell initially, especially because you're really focusing on groups of people that it's not the quick sell, and it's that long-term relationship.
Absolutely, it's exactly the same as over this side. So which communities over there that you know, Brian, are kind of doing it well, are really good examples of B2B communities, do you think?
So, I work a lot with enterprise tech and small business tech, so, a lot of the B2B in the tech space really seems to be more focused and understanding on the value of community. I think it's also a harder sell the larger the company, so the large enterprises, although they have more of an army, I think are oftentimes the change really to understand how to really build a B2B community is a long-term game. So for me, I think it's it's a little bit of these newer age digital tech startups, I think, are the ones that really have embraced the B2B community more so than some of the other ones.
It's true, yeah, exactly. I've doing a lot of work in a couple of traditional sectors over here, the further education sector and construction, who are a few people trying to build communities from scratch, and a lot of their potential community members are only just coming into the kind of social world and starting out in the social thing. So trying to get the message over with all the kind of social media stuff is really tricky. But it's going to be beneficial in the end, because they'll be kind of leaders in their kind of community side of it.
How are you making that message stick?
I think it's a lot of educational type sectors, like trying to put the traditional, the new kind of community management message that we all kind of know and love, to try and get it to stick and put it in language they understand and that they kind of relate to in terms of their business goals and things like that. Especially in the FE sector, a lot of it's traditionally very reactive, so not very much productive and not very much looking forward to what's happening kind of next week or what they need now and stuff, which is kind of the opposite of building a kind of a long-term community and getting long-term gains and building the bigger picture. And it's really proving a bit of a transition or kind of a change in the whole ethos of their companies, really. So, in creating brand advocates, I mean, we do a couple of bits of work over here where we're looking to create brand advocates for a couple of B2B companies, especially in the FE and the construction sector. How does that differ, do you think, in a B2B world, creating advocates, and is there a particular kind of role like a CEO that would be better for, do you think?
I'm not sure what the difference kind of is, really, be it B2B or B2C, if you've got to create a brand advocate. And I think someone becomes a brand advocate because they've either had an amazing experience with a product or with the service. And whether that is in a B2B context or in a B2C context, I think fundamentally it's kind of the same. I think obviously the contexts do kind of like change somewhat, but creating that experience, and perhaps not just a one-off experience, you know, kind of time and time again, making it a part of the culture of what you do or what you sell. I think that goes a massive way to create brand advocates, whether you're B2C or B2B.
Well, I think some of the problems that people are running into, when we're talking employee advocacy and really a social business where a B2B has to connect the external influencer with your social employee or your employee that's championing your brand. Part of the difficulty in the B2B space is word of mouth and really name recognition isn't something as often that you can capitalize on like a traditional B2C. So I think a lot of that is really not only building that relationship, that it's that trust. You have to trust not only the influencer to connect with the employee, but the influencer to help really spread that word of mouth. And I think it starts really internally with the internal community, but at the same time you have to really connect employees with influencers to really build that momentum moving forward, so that it's really a united front kind of spreading that B2B message.
That's great. That's a great point, the united front. We're having there's a couple of clients I'm working with at the moment where we're looking to do exactly that and have the CEO have their own voice, and then the market managers and each kind of manager of each outlet, because it's a multi-site outlet, have their own voice and engage with their own local kind of B2B community. And I think that's a tactic that we're trying to get the same kind of tone of voice and the same message to go through, but I think that looks like it's going to work really well.
So you mean like having it at the top and then filter down through?
Yeah, because the CEO in his own right is a good kind of figurehead. He's got a lot to say. It's a person to look up to, a person of influence to other business owners, even if they're not in their sector. He's done really well and things like that, and I think that's a good message and a good kind of figurehead to have in building a community, somebody that any businessman can relate to.
Yeah.
Well, I think when you think B2B, I think oftentimes not to cliche the idea of human to human or return on relationship. But I think in the B2B space, I think what you really have to think about is what your goals are, but also understanding those quick wins might not be as easy as the B2C community. But I also don't think of the B2B community, you can't use because you're a B2B business as an excuse not to invest in your community. And I think too often without leadership buy-in, like you were saying, Tim, like if you don't have that leadership buy-in, I think sometimes that excuse is too easy to throw out there. And really it starts with adding value and creating, connecting people with people no matter what business you're in overall.
Yeah, indeed. Is there any ways you can humanize a kind of a traditional business or a B2B business that differs than when you're working with a community? Is there any issues that have come up to anybody's forefront of their mind when they're working within the B2B sector, do you think?
In terms of what, creating an internal change, or?
Yeah, kind of how to portray a a B2B business is kind of how to humanize it, really, how to get people to build relationships, because people buy people.
Yeah.
Like Brian said, you know what I mean? But it's important to try and get that message, and some businesses are very hard to humanize because they're all about the brand and all about the product or the widget or the service that they do, you know.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
I think no matter what community you're trying to build, I think if you're sharing insight or sharing content that is helping the external community, no matter what, no one's going to say no to that. So I think part of humanizing the B2B space is, rather than focusing on it being B2B, focus on the people that are your champions. Focus on turning some of your employees into the rock stars, so that they can then be more of the face of the brand, more so than just the logo. I think that's where that employee advocacy kind of takes on another role in the B2B space, because they're not really getting you to buy anything, but that B2B brand advocate can really be powerful as someone that ends up being someone that you can relate to. Although I'm not purchasing something from them, I probably can influence another business based on my experience with an employee or a champion inside of a B2B brand.
I see. Yeah, I see. That's quite a good point. So there was, is there any particular role? Would it be the kind of sales role, do you think, Brian, that fulfill that role better, or would it be just any kind of like customer services representation or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean customer facing. I think when you think of a customer facing, not only a customer facing employee, but also anyone that's dealing and understands the brand story. I mean, ideally, leadership. There's nobody better to tell where your brand value proposition is than as an executive in the company. But I think when you have a social selling concept is really empowering your sales team with information and connecting with the community. I think that really does start with a customer-facing role, but it can be empowered by a employee, no matter what their role is across the company.
Awesome. Well, I hope to get that in. I think Jazz has joined us. Hello, Jazz. Are you still in?
Hi, Tim. You're cutting in light a bit. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, we can. It's good to have you in. We've seen you nipping in and out all the time. We were just discussing creating kind of brand advocates for B2B communities. I wondered what kind of your experience is why you've joined us.
Well, I think for me, working with a lot of sole traders, smaller businesses, I think the whole concept's not necessarily on their agenda. So I think it's really what's been said about leadership is important. I think any group of people, any community is looking for a leader, and I think it depends on the leader as to the brand that comes across.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you have any examples of B2B businesses that are building the community well, Chaz?
I suppose that the main thing that we do is the tweet hour, building the community there. We've also tried to link in Google Plus and LinkedIn to make it a wider community so that people can engage on the basis that they want to engage. But the core thing for us is really engaging people where they're at the time that suits them. And that's the main thing that Twitter offers us with that building of community, really, Tim.
I see, yeah. So when we build a kind of a B2B community, especially if it's a lot of kind of traditional kind of industries and things like that, what's the is measurement more important when building a B2B community? Because people in traditional kind of industries that I'm working with are more interested in seeing numbers. They understand numbers and get it. Do you know what I mean in terms of measurement? So trying to convince that into a kind of an engagement stat or reach stat or follower growth stat it's kind of an interesting thing. So do you think there's any particular measurements in the B2B community space that are more important than the B2C one.
Well,
I'm not sure.
I think
Sorry, Brian, go ahead.
documenting your wins across the board is important when you're talking B2B. I think sometimes that long-term goal we only think about documenting or managing data at the end when someone asks us to measure those goals. But like kind of what you were saying with the with the Twitter chats or anytime you're gaining feedback, I think if you can take the feedback that you're gaining when you're engaging with the community or your other fellow B2B brands and take that feedback and kind of document it. I think those are some of the big things you can have wins along the way without it having to be just that only documenting the data at your long-term goal, because I think that'll help not only get initial buy-in but also keep people kind of motivated across the board.
Exactly.
Why would that be different than in a B2C space?
Well, I think oftentimes in the B2C space, you're able to get the quicker wins externally, like to show almost, I wouldn't say show off, but you almost get the quicker wins in a larger scale. Maybe you're seeing a higher growth because your target audience is so much larger. Even from like a Twitter chat perspective, if you host a Hangout or a Twitter chat, the number of participants you're going to get in a B2C focused community is going to be a lot larger than you would in a B2B. But if you document your win and your hockey stick scale over time, it doesn't really matter the total number as long as that number and growth happens across the board.
Okay.
I mean, you do a lot of video marketing, Amir, and what sort of kind of correlation with measurements and analytics kind of do you see there in the B2B world? I mean, is there any examples there that you can?
Well, I think the most important stat or metric that we track for clients is engagement percentage. So how much of a video is actually being watched as opposed to views. So in a meeting, people will mostly think, this has only had, a couple of hundred views, but that's not really important. What's important is the context of those views. So who's watched them and how much of the video they've watched, and then also what they do after they've watched the video as well, because in many cases we create videos to influence. We want people to click on a call to action or make an inquiry or make a sale or something. So it is very kind of like personalized what we track for which client, but I think underpinning it all is engagement.
Yeah.
I see. So, in terms of tool, I suppose getting the message across and from the influencer, from whoever, I think video is probably one of the greatest tools to do that in a B2B space, because people can understand it and they can see it. Another one that a lot of the B2B clients I use has been used in terms of tools is LinkedIn, obviously, because there's a big kind of focus on more of the network than the social there, and I know Brian and Amir and Jazz do some great posts on the publisher sector, on the publisher thing, and I think that's started to have some great traction and great kind of engagement on a B2B side. From my experience, I mean, is there on LinkedIn, I suppose there's a good portion towards the social selling side, which is obviously Brian's kind of area of expertise. Is that the key tool, do you think, Brian, in building a community for business, or?
I think it's really about finding ways to tell stories. So I'm a big fan, like Amir said, about videos, because it gives you, not only allows you to humanize the story, but allows you to look someone in their digital eyeballs, is what I like to say, because you are actually having that personalized conversation. And I think that's oftentimes dismissed. And I think we can even talk about what community this whole day is, where these are different people sharing their stories, sharing their insights. And LinkedIn Publisher is great because you don't have to have a website, you don't have to worry about SEO. you're able to provide your content, and it gets in the feed of those that you're already connected with. I think that kind of is why Publisher has kind of taken off, and really just like this sales game is really never changed. When we're talking about social selling, we're talking about using the social as a tool to build the same relationships we build on the golf course, the same relationships we build when we're going out to dinner with the people that we normally make these conversations with. We're just leveraging it without limitations. So I think instead of treating social selling or social in the B2B space as an easy button, it's more just like another tool in your arsenal to tell your story and then really humanize those connections to build those relationships.
Great, that's great. Do you think, I heard on a podcast, I think a while ago as well, about somebody was saying each business should have their kind of own LinkedIn group or something like that to kind of cultivate and build a listing that they can and kind of grow and sell into and all the great stuff that a community does. Now, I don't know, I know a few businesses have got kind of related groups of the business, especially in the kind of finance sector. Has anybody built LinkedIn groups for their clients specifically just for their business and their communities, I wonder?
No, I haven't. In terms of social, it's mostly been Twitter. For me, some Facebook, but mostly Twitter.
What about you, Jazz? Have you built any LinkedIn groups for clients?
Not built them, but participate in them with networking groups and things.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I don't really find there's much traction with them. There's so many groups around, and I think people are just overwhelmed with information. That's why I think that Twitter works best for us, because it's in your face as much as it can be, and I don't find the groups really work at all, to be honest.
Right, interesting.
Well, I
interesting
think sometimes we make the mistake of thinking that we have to have our own group, or we have to create our own Twitter chat, or we have to create our own, and really I think it's also connecting with other groups and other communities and kind of leveraging, why not, empowering your employees and them so they can participate in, groups that your fellow businesses or, other customers are actually participating in, rather than having to manage your own. I think managing your own group means that you have to bring the people to you. Why not you as a B2B leader go to where they're already having conversations and engage them there? And I think that's kind of the mistake LinkedIn groups have. That's why there's too many of them, in my opinion, where rather than really starting your own and having someone have more notifications and really probably muting that, find where your target audience and community is already engaging and add value. It's really not even link dropping. It's really connecting that. And if Twitter's your best place, why not start the engagement on LinkedIn, and then that's really where you can bridge people over to that real-time back and forth conversation on Twitter.
Yeah, that's great. Mia, you touched on using Facebook to build businesses. How's other people finding that in the B2B space?
It's in terms of B2B, I think it's difficult on Facebook. I think it lends itself more to B2C, just by the nature of what Facebook kind of is. I do think there is other applications like B2B, like advertising and whatnot, because it can be so targeted now. The experience I've had in kind of building, kind of helping to cultivate a community on Facebook has been in the B2C kind of like area with a gym. Yeah. We use video as well as we use a whole mix of media, so it was kind of blog articles, photos, video. So we kind of like use the whole mix to just generate that kind of engagement.
I see. So I've used a few kind of Facebook groups, especially now it's got its own kind of dedicated app as well, which seem to be pretty easy to kind of grow communities in and get to it, because people can log in and see exactly what they need to and get the messaging side to it, which we've set up for a thing called the Construction Leaders Group, which is basically a few MDs and CEOs look at local, kind of the middle of the UK, called the East Midlands for our non-UK friends. in joining them, and they've worked quite well because it's pretty simple to use, and they've been more engaged than having a kind of a negative opinion of a Facebook page, really. Then,
so is it almost like a mastermind that you're creating with that?
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. So the whole kind of networking group is real traditional kind of community model. There's a blog, there's a monthly newsletter, people subscribe to it. They have kind of networking groups and then sell into them mastermind groups. So real kind of traditional model that works, you know, and thousands and thousands of people do. But this is specifically for the niche of construction people and construction companies, and most of them are pretty antisocial. I don't mean that they're not nice to be around, but in terms of using the kind of digital tools, you know, they're not very great. Some of them have a page and things like that, but they're just doing it to kind of because everybody else is doing it now, and it's a little bit late. So, but they seem to have really taken to using the Facebook group rather than the page, which is pretty interesting.
Well,
so
I think
we do.
That might come into the fact. I think there's partially that education factor, right? And you want to go where they're at and make it easy on them. And I think oftentimes a page is assumed as, you know, it's a controlled brand message that's almost, you know, pay to play marketing. Where I think the group is more focused around a topic and a vision rather than just having like that marketing controlled, you know, blast. And I think, you know, you'll be surprised. I think oftentimes B2B, I used to laugh that if I brought up the word Facebook, they assumed it was cat pictures and things that I'm posting pictures of my kids. And I think, you know, those Facebook groups are a great way of kind of showing people that initial value on saying, hey, this is a group that's coming together just talking about these kind of things. And I think that's kind of a change in mentality. But you're right. I think the groups seem to be a lot more successful. I participate in a lot of Facebook groups that, you know, 6 months ago or a year ago I would have never participated in. And I think the growth of them really has to do with the idea that a page feels like marketing blast and a group much more feels like a community.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly. Yeah. So that's exactly what I thought. So, as we're coming towards the end of the time, I suppose, so what do we think's next kind of tool or tactic for the B2B community world that's coming on that's not there? Is there a next big thing, or is there just more population of kind of Facebook pages or Twitter or Vine or Instagram for business to business stuff?
I mean, personally, as someone that's really passionate about video and kind of, I think I understand kind of its application, I'd like to see video be used in a more casual way, I suppose, for people to communicate with one another, for people to get to know one another. Like Brian said, if he's a member of various groups on Facebook, it's going to be difficult to actually get to know people because if there are so many in a group, kind of casually using video, using your phone to kind of like make something and upload just to kind of get your personality across, to add a little bit of value. I'd like to see more of that used going forward, I think.
I think it's all about creating new media, new ways to have conversations. You know, I host a podcast now, and I've been amazed how many, you know, even in the B2B space where a brand might not have their own podcast, but they want to be a guest, they want to sponsor podcasts. I think it's about, you know, empowering your employees to create video blogs or to create their own podcast. You know, and these brands, I don't think you have to create everything yourself. I think creating a media hub is important, but that media hub doesn't have to be 100% internal. It can be investing in your employees' communities, investing in your employees to have video blogs, investing in, you know, I think these new medias. And I think the end game is really the data. I think if we can build our solutions around gathering data, including feedback, I think with these new medias, I think that's the win across the board.
Oh, yeah, that's great. I forgot all about podcasts. I've recently got over the last kind of year got really into them and find them really useful and stuff. And I don't know any businesses that I've worked with or kind of know of in the community that I hang around with that use that as a kind of marketing tool. Do you, Jazz? Do you know anyone who does a podcast client-wise?
Well, it's one of the things actually, Tim, that we're starting to use now. So you'll see it rolling out in the next few weeks, because what we find is that people are so busy overloaded with email, with stuff coming through, and even with video, they don't have the time to sit and watch it. So what we're looking at is adding value to our communities through sharing information via podcasts and things. So I think in the UK, that's going to take off in 2015, and it's a tool that we don't really use enough of. If I might add as well, the second thing that we're experimenting with the clients we work with is Vine, because taking little testimonials at events or off clients, I think we're going to see a big rise in people using Vine, and you can embed it on your website, you can put it out into your tweet hours and things. So those are the two things that I think we're going to be pioneering in the UK, definitely, in 2015, and they're within the grasp of ordinary businesses as well. You don't need a lot of money, just a bit of intuition, really.
Oh, cool. Didn't you do a little series of Vine marketing, Amir?
Yeah, I did. Last summer, I did one a day for about 25 days on a hashtag 6sec tip. So it was just a 6-second tip about video marketing or marketing that I ran for about 25 days, just as an experiment, really, just to see what kind of what reaction it would get, and it was a really good conversation starter.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think if we switch the focus to creating one piece of great content and then turning that into other pieces of content that's easily consumed, back to your point on everybody being so overly busy, creating a podcast is another way of getting your story in their ear. But really, if you create one hour podcast, that can turn into a blog post, that can turn into an email newsletter, that can turn into an infographic, that can turn into a 6-second Vine. And rather than creating content for content's sake and over polluting the already noisy world, I think it's creating that one great piece of content, even leveraging a hashtag like you had said, and kind of connecting that story so that you can have conversations not only in different media, but kind of touch everybody, because everybody consumes it differently. I think if we only focus on blasting with content via a blog, you're going to miss so much of your audience, especially in a B2B space, because you have to admit people are busy in that area as well.
That's a great point, Brian. Thanks a lot for that. And wanted to say thanks really quick. We're actually running up on the next panel here, so wanted to thank you guys. Thanks so much, Tim, for putting this together. Thanks to everybody out there for dealing with all of our technical difficulties. But hey, you know what? Just like community management, you gotta roll with it, and that's what happened. So,
True story.
yeah. So, Brew, what do we actually have coming up next?
Yeah, so coming up, guys, is engaging communities with purpose. So head on over to cpad.co, click on the broadcast schedule, find that one, and we'll see you in just a little bit.
Cool.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.